voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Gavin Newsom says the most racist thing to a group of African-American voters. We have the audio. A man is shot and killed breaking into Mar-a-Lago in Florida. We'll get the latest on Iran from Rebecca Heinrichs, and we'll also explore where Trump is headed next on his tariff policy. It is Monday, February 23rd, the day before the State of the Union address. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting live from Louisville, Kentucky today. This is Common Sense for the American people here on Salem. Quick word of thanks to my friends in Collin County, Texas. I keynoted the Republican Lincoln Dinner there on Saturday night at the famous South Fork Ranch, home to the Dallas television show. Signed a lot of books in the J.R. Ewing room. It was great fun, and really appreciate the Republicans in Texas for having me down for the weekend. Let's get to the news today, and although it went without much notice from the mainstream media, an intruder was shot and killed breaking into Mar-a-Lago this weekend. This happened early Sunday morning around 1:30 when the suspect made an unauthorized entry through the north gate of the president's resort as another vehicle was exiting. The man is identified, 21-year-old Austin Tucker Martin of North Carolina. He was carrying a shotgun and a fuel can. The president was not there this weekend, but the incident is a reminder of the threats that he and his family constantly face. A major snowstorm is lashing the Northeast today. Over 40 million people under a blizzard warning at one time today. The storm dumping nearly 2 feet of snow in some places, and a major headache on transit in these metropolitan areas like New York and Boston. 20 inches of snow at LaGuardia a little while ago, over 2 feet at Newark Airport. Politics, rough weekend for California. Let's start with this absolutely brutal reporting from CNN. Yes, CNN on Sunday. Fareed Zakaria ran an absolutely damning report on homelessness in Los Angeles and all the money that has been spent there by Democrats, and all for naught. Let's take a listen to that. Cut 11.
Take Los Angeles, another one-party metropolis wrestling with affordability and disorder. The city's homelessness budget for fiscal year 2025-26 totals about $950 million. The LA Homelessness Services Authority reported that in 2023, homelessness was up 9% countywide and 10% in the city. And a 2024 AP account noted that homelessness has surged 70% countywide since 2015 and 80% in the city. All this amid public frustration despite billions spent. An audit reviewed $2.4 billion in city homelessness funding and found that officials could not reliably track where it went or what it achieved. Or take Chicago, with a mayor whose approval rating is deep underwater, where the pension promises are so large that they will surely bankrupt the city at some point. What is the theory of good government here? If the answer is keep adding programs, the city will keep producing unaffordability, because unaffordability is what happens when government becomes a machine that grows faster than the society it governs.
For Los Angeles, the hits just keep on coming. Homeless crisis, billions wasted. Can't rebuild homes after the Palisades fire. Just an absolute failed city. And this bombshell came on Sunday night. California Governor Gavin Newsom furiously trying out new characters as he runs for president in 2028, was speaking to a crowd of black voters in Georgia. So we have a rich white guy here, a career politician, speaking to a crowd of black voters in the South. You have to listen to how Gavin Newsom chose to attempt to bond with this audience. Here's cut 2.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. And I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
You know what? Let me play this again. This is Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, a rich, white, male Democrat politician who wants to be president of the United States, saying this to a crowd of black voters in Georgia this weekend. Let's hear it again. Cut number 2.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
Folks, this is about the most racist thing you could possibly say. Gavin Newsom telling a group of black voters in a slow, condescending voice, speaking to them like they're children. Hey, I am as dumb as you are. Please like me. Now, if this were a Republican, the news media would be calling it the end of their career. But for a Democrat telling black voters, hey, I know you're dumb, so let me pretend to be as dumb as you are. Newsom, by the way, is claiming he was simply referring to his dyslexia. Folks, prepare yourself. Newsom's dyslexia is going to be the new Biden stutter. When the person says something dumb or racist, just blame it on that. It's the Biden playbook all over again. Now, I would say this is an isolated incident, but things like this have been going on for years. What is wrong with the Democratic Party right now? Let's just go over the last 2 weeks where we've heard this argument about voter ID over and over, that black voters are too dumb to figure out how to vote. In fact, Gavin Newsom made this argument again in Georgia to this same audience. If we require voter ID, black voters will be too dumb to figure out how to vote. He even claimed that he was too dumb to figure it out. Listen to this, cut number 3.
You know where your birth certificate is? I lost that at 7. I mean, I don't even know where to begin to get it back. So these guys are not screwing around.
The trouble is, if you literally Google, get my California birth certificate, it takes you to a website where you can get your birth certificate on a page run by the state of California, where Gavin Newsom, at last check, is the governor. Gavin Newsom, and let's be honest, other Democrats too, are fetishizing being stupid in an effort to bond with black voters because they're telling on themselves. They do believe black voters are stupid. That is what they are saying out loud. To every black voter in America, please listen to the words coming out of their mouths. These white Democrats like Gavin Newsom, when presented with an opportunity to attempt to identify with you, to bond with you, their first instinct is to conclude, well, these people are morons, so I need to act like a moron too, so they will like me. There is nothing more racist than this. There is nothing more condescending than this. There is nothing more degrading than this. Gavin Newsom joins a long line of rich white Democrats who have played the dumb card to attempt to identify with black voters. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, over and over and over again. These rich white Democrats couldn't possibly be more racist, and all the while telling you that it's Trump and his people who are racist. The projection, friends, is off the charts. Scott Jennings is broadcasting to you here on Salem, Common Sense for the American people. Let's get some news about aches and pains. Passing along a listener note I thought was worth sharing. This one from Eileen here in my home Commonwealth of Kentucky. Eileen, 87 years old. There was a point for her where walking had become very difficult. She figured, hey, this is what happens when you get old. But then she tried Relief Factor. Now Eileen, in her note here, says, I'm walking again. I'm even dancing around to music. Her words were simple. She has no pain. Now, she started out taking 3 packets a day. Now she's down to 2. She says relief factor made all the difference for her. That's what people are looking for here. Real improvement, not hype. Now, we're using relief factor in the Jennings household. You've heard me talk about my own father. He's having a marvelous experience with relief factor, playing golf, living the life that he wants to live in his retirement years. If you've tried other options, Relief Factor is worth looking at. They have a 3-week quick start plan. See how your body responds. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. More to come on the Scott Jennings Show. Where is the president headed next on tariffs following the Supreme Court ruling? We'll find out. We're also checking in on Iran. All of this still to come here on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Scott, listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, February 23rd, and the United States continues to build up its array of military assets in the Middle East. Here's the president last week on Air Force One talking about the situation with Iran. Cut 7.
Today on Iran, bad things will happen if Iran doesn't make
really bad
a deal.
things.
What will that?
I'm not going to talk to you about that.
Okay, can you just let me know what is the goal if there is a U.S. military
Well, we're
strike?
going to make a deal, or we're going to get a deal one way or the other.
But with a military strike, is it to wipe out their nuclear
I'm not going to
program?
talk to you about that, but we're either going to get a deal or it's going to be unfortunate for them.
And since they can't meet, have you given them a deadline firm to make a deal?
I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
Joining us now to discuss, Rebecca Heinrichs. She works with the Hudson Institute, and she is the official national security correspondent of the Scott Jennings Show. Rebecca, welcome back, and tell us, where are we, in your opinion, with this situation with Iran?
Thanks, Scott. Good to be here. Well, there, as you just noted, there is a massive amount of military power basically surrounding Iran right now, naval forces, air forces, and in particular concern, one of my colleagues really astutely pointed this out to me over the weekend, the E-3 Sentinel AWACS aircraft, that is for high-end censoring. So if you really want to kind of get an idea of what the adversary is doing and you want to make some options and some planning for potential combat campaign, you're going to want to deploy these. And there are 6 of them now deployed around Iran. So it does, in fact, look like the Trump administration is now evaluating what kind of military campaigns they might give to the president, some options for him to make.
So we've heard, Rebecca, that the president might be in one of those options, considering a short-term limited strike to try to drive Iran back to the table in a more serious fashion. We've also seen the president today share a video from Mark Levin talking about that no deal is worth striking with Iran because you can't trust them to keep it anyway. Based on everything you're hearing out in the air, what is the most likely outcome here, and how soon do you think something should or could happen?
So I think the way I'm kind of thinking through all of this is we know that whatever President Trump wants to do militarily, and we've seen this with the operation to remove Maduro in Venezuela, and then, of course, the Operation Midnight Hammer to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, that President Trump wants to find that sweet spot. What can we realistically, militarily achieve that gets the majority of our goals that we want with the least amount of risk to U.S. forces either conducting the operation or with U.S. forces in the region. And he likes to keep some flexibility so that if he does carry out a strike, he's not going to feel compelled to be dragged down there. So I would expect that President Trump has asked General Kane, he's the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, to give him the various options that kind of meet those criteria. I think that at this point, President Trump understands that the Ayatollah is 86 years old. He's a radical Islamist. He is not going to make a deal. He is going to go down with the ship, and that makes getting any kind of deal impossible. And I think that is bolstered by the video that he showed of Mark Levin. I think President Trump at this point is just looking for the military options to get the most of what he wants done that would benefit the security of the American people.
Now, Rebecca, the military has massive amounts of assets in the region. Can you put into perspective for our listeners the size and scope of the military buildup here and maybe compare it to historical situations that we've seen in the Middle East over the last few decades?
Yeah. So this is massive. This is a massive amount. I mean, I shouldn't laugh because it's so serious, but it's breathtaking in the sheer size. We've got two aircraft carriers in the region, the Abraham Lincoln, the Gerald Ford. Each of them carry with them all these attendant battleships, and then with them all of the airplanes for air power that goes along with it surrounding Iran. I think part of what has taken so much time since President Trump issued his initial threat to the Iran regime when it was massacring the Iranian protesters is that we wanted to get that second carrier battle group into the region. Of course, it's been carrying out President Trump's mission in around Venezuela, Cuba, and so you have to move these things. Take time to move into place. But just a massive amount. And I talked about those surveillance airplanes, and we basically. Yeah, we've got some deployed around Europe right now, but the majority of them now around Iran. So near unprecedented. I think we've only had one other time around Desert Storm where we've had this much military power in the region.
Rebecca Heinrichs with the Hudson Institute will be watching this for the rest of the week. We're going to take a break. When we come back, exploring where the president is headed next on tariffs. Stay with us here on The Scott Jennings Show.
Now, for America's favorite pundit, it's Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, February 23rd. Common sense for the American people. On Friday, here on this show, we brought you the live breaking coverage of the president's reaction to the Supreme Court, striking down much of his tariff policy. But as you heard during that coverage, the president clearly had a plan B ready to go. My next guest is an expert on what happens next. He's the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. E.J. Antoni, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show. Thanks for being with us today.
Scott, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, E.J., you and I have digested the ruling. We have listened to the president's pivot. We've heard from Secretary Bessent over the weekend about these other statutory authorities. Give us your perspective on the ruling and where the president is headed next with these tariffs under other statutes.
Well, Scott, as was outlined in Kavanaugh's dissent, very articulately, I thought, the president has at least half a dozen other authorities under which he can impose tariffs. And one of those that very few people have been talking about, but actually was mentioned in the dissent, Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, is incredibly powerful, incredibly broad in its definitions, incredibly wide sweeping. If the president simply finds as a fact, according to the statute, that there's some kind of discrimination by other countries against U.S. commerce, for example, he can levy tariffs up to 50%. And if he wants to go beyond that, he can actually issue outright embargoes. So this idea that somehow tariffs are going to go away simply because the court ruled against the administration regarding IEEPA, one tariff authority in particular, that was never the case. And I think it was very clearly demonstrated just hours after the ruling, when the president slapped a 10% tariff, and that then went up to a 15% tariff only hours thereafter. So again, all of the hype from places like the Wall Street Journal, who kept telling us that if the court rules against Trump, tariffs go away. No, that was never going to be the case, as was evident by the fact that the Trump administration had a plan B ready to go, and as was also evident by the fact that, again, Kavanaugh outlined, I thought very articulately in his dissent, that all of these other tariff authorities do exist. Now, do they impose certain limitations on the president, which IEEPA didn't? Yes, that is true. I think it slows the president down. It limits him in terms of speed. It also limits him somewhat in terms of flexibility. And so using these half a dozen other authorities in terms of negotiating with other countries, it does limit the president somewhat. But that's it. This really is just a limitation. It's a speed bump, not a roadblock.
EJ, one of those limitations, I believe, in one of these statutory authorities to which the president has pivoted limits this to 150 days unless the Congress decides to extend it. It's unlikely this Congress would vote to do that. Do you have any insight in how the White House plans to get around the 150-day window?
Well, Scott, there's nothing in the statute that would prevent the president from simply issuing yet another national emergency. In other words, restarting that 150-day clock all over again. Now, of course, are these things that are all going to have to be litigated? Yes. But I will point out that several of these tariff authorities, which they all come from laws that are between 50 and 90, almost 100 years old, several of these tariff authorities have been used by presidents in the past, and this has been litigated in the past, and they have held up in court. So again, this idea that somehow this is going to stop the president, look, whether you love tariffs or hate it, doesn't matter. And I'm not even at this moment arguing for or against the tariffs. All I'm simply trying to point out here is the fact that the tariffs are not going away. There are far too many other statutory authorities which the president has at his disposal, and he has shown us he is not afraid of using these things.
EJ, the president moving his authority around to different statutes here, what is the net shakeout of all of this? Is the effective rate for global tariffs here going to be about the same as it was, or are we going to see a difference here in terms of the effective tariff rate from Plan A to Plan B?
Scott, it's a great question. I would say overall, in the long run, again, not the short run, because there are some limitations here in terms of, I think, the president's flexibility and speed. But in the long run, that we just don't see those same limitations on the chief executive. So therefore, you would expect that the overall tariff rate, the average tariff rate on everything coming into the country is going to stay roughly the same as it was before the Supreme Court issued their ruling on Friday.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court a little bit, and specifically Democratic hypocrisy. Some Democrats are flip-flopping pretty hard when it comes to the Supreme Court. In fact, let's hear from Elizabeth Warren. This comes from our friend Maze Moore on the X platform. Here's cut number 4.
We have a Supreme Court that has basically jumped the guardrails and is out there giving power to the president, saying that the president can commit any act that the president wants, saying that Congress cannot authorize agencies to act. So we've got a Supreme Court that is actively undermining our democracy. My view right now is the courts are where we are hanging on to our constitutional structure. They still have the power to hold everybody else in this country in contempt if they do not follow lawfully issued court orders.
EJ, it seems like Elizabeth Warren's view of whether the Supreme Court is destructive or constructive depends on what their ruling is at any given time. What'd you make of her?
Just more hypocrisy, Scott. This is more of the same from the woman who, thought it was okay to lie about her DNA, for example. I mean, what an absolute joke from a joke of a woman, quite frankly. And I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but I think it's true. This is also the same woman who right before the 2024 presidential election was pressuring the Fed. The woman who today talks about we have to do everything to maintain the Fed's independence, she was trying to destroy the Fed's political independence in 2024, pressuring them to do not just a quarter basis point cut, excuse me, a quarter percentage point, 25 basis points, not just a half a point or 50 basis points, but a full 3/4, 75 basis points. That's what she wanted, because she wanted to try to goose the economy right before the election. Fast forward to today, and all of a sudden rate cuts are off the table. Why? Because the guy in the White House has an R after his name. She is an absolute hypocrite on just about everything I can think of.
That voice you're hearing today, E.J. Antoni, he's the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. We're discussing the president's tariff policy. EJ, I want to shift gears and talk macroeconomics a little bit. Give us your current analysis of the U.S. economy ahead of the president's speech to the nation tomorrow night. What would you like to hear him say, and how would you describe our economic situation if you were in his shoes?
Scott, I think I'd like to hear the president acknowledge two different things, which sometimes are viewed as opposites, but they're really not. It's just, I think it's more so a statement of how far we fell under Joe Biden. In other words, I want to hear the president say, number one, we were on the wrong track, but now we're on the right track. So wrong direction, we course corrected, we're heading in the right direction. That's a good thing. But the second thing, I think, is recognizing the fact that a lot of people are still hurting today. And a couple of real quick data points illustrate that. Number one, if you look at what the average American's weekly paycheck could actually buy, so not just the size of the paycheck, but what they could buy with that paycheck, it shrunk about 4% under Biden because prices rose so much faster than wages that those higher incomes actually turned into lower standards of living. So that's the first one. Now, under Trump, what has happened? Again, we've course corrected. Your paycheck goes about 2% further after 1 year of the Trump presidency. So we've gotten back half of the lost ground in terms of real or inflation-adjusted incomes. But again, that tells you have not yet regained all of the lost ground. So a lot of people, yes, they're still hurting today. Another quick point, Scott, is the fact that under Biden, the monthly mortgage payment on a median price home in this country literally doubled. It rose a little more than 100%, I think about 105% under Biden. In just 4 years, that's insane. Now, under Trump, it's come down about 8% or so. Once again, you were heading in the wrong direction previously. You're now heading in the right direction today, but you have not yet regained all that lost ground. Home ownership affordability is still a problem today because we are still trying to clean up the mess from Biden.
Yeah, I think one of the things plaguing the president on describing economics generally is the deepness of the hole that he was left by Joe Biden. It was monumental. And when you talk about the inflation rates, you talk about the cost of home ownership, the spike in health insurance costs, whatever it is that's driving a regular person crazy in their own life when it comes to affordability. I mean, these things got so bad under Biden. And now the things are moving back in the correct direction under Trump, but you're not seeing, and you won't see, frankly, the kinds of dramatic move back in the correct direction. You're going to see incremental or, decent progress, but it's going to take some time. Should the president just beg the American people for some more patience and continue to describe just how bad things got under Biden?
Well, I'm not sure if asking for patience is necessarily the right tact here. Now, look, take this with a grain of salt. I'm a monetary scientist, not a political scientist, so I'll leave it to the actual experts in the field. But the reason I hesitate to say please have patience is because the American people have had patience not just for the first 12 months under Trump, but they had patience for 4 whole years under Biden, and that was an absolute disaster. So if you're talking to people today and saying just have patience for another year, it's not on top of 1 year, it's on top of 5 years, if we really want to think of it that way. So exactly what the messaging is, I'm not entirely sure. Hammering on all of the failures of Joe Biden might be very, very productive insofar as it explains to people who is to blame for their hardships that they are facing today, which again is obviously Biden. But just, Scott, real quick, by the same token that it's going to take Trump time to clean up the mess, I think it's also worth pointing out it took Biden time to make the mess. He signed his first multi-trillion-dollar spending bill that set off all of this inflation and the huge rise in interest rates. He signed the first bill a month after taking office, but it took 18 months, a year and a half into his term, before inflation actually hit a 40-year high. So it's not as if as soon as you do something in terms of public policy, the effects are going to be felt everywhere by everybody. These things do take time. It took time on the way down. It's going to take time on the way up.
EJ, I had a boss in politics years ago who used to say, instant coffee ruined the world. People expect results, and they expect them now, and heavy is the head that wears the crown. That's EJ Antoni. He's the chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. EJ, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll check back with you in the weeks ahead as more economic data flows in. Quick word from our friends at Patriot Mobile, and I have to say, I saw all the Patriot Mobile guys this weekend in Collin County, Texas, when I was down there. That's where they're headquartered, and man, are they excited about Patriot Mobile. They're excited about the company's mission. They're excited about America 250 and about the direction of the country and our culture. Really, really optimistic people, and they just have a message for all of you, and that is that most wireless companies don't care who you are or what you believe in. They just want your money, but Patriot Mobile is different, and for 12 years, they have stood firmly with Americans who believe what they believe, that the Christian conservative movement is worth defending and fighting for. When you sign up with Patriot Mobile, you are funding your values. They invest in your values. Switching is not a hassle. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. They have a 100% U.S.-based customer support team. Trust me, I know these guys. You won't regret it. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott. Call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott and get a free month of service. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. When we come back, I had a dust-up with a Tennessee state rep on Friday night. You'll want to hear it on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
And we certainly busted one on Friday night. I did a lot of traveling last week, but I did make time to stop in New York City for an appearance on the Abby Phillip Newsnight debating show. And they stuck a guy out there with me named Justin Pearson, who is a state representative from Tennessee. He's running for Congress in a Democratic primary, actually, against a guy named Steve Cohen, who is the last Democrat in Tennessee's congressional delegation. But we got into it over immigration. Justin Pearson said we should abolish ICE and replace it with something that could, quote, do the job. I had some questions for Justin Pearson. It's insane. It's a minute and 41 seconds of the distillation of the insane policy position of the Democratic Party today. Let's listen to it. Cut number one.
We have to abolish ICE. We have to abolish the Customs and Border Patrol in the way that they currently exist and replace them with something that actually does the work that we need for them to do, and that is effective at holding these people in this administration accountable. I'll tell you what the work is not. The work is not killing American citizens.
You said the work we need them to do. I'm interested in your opinion. What
Absolutely.
is the work that we need them to do?
Absolutely. One, the work is not killing American citizens.
No, what is the work we need them to do?
Well, first, let's look at what they don't need to do. They don't need to go into communities like Memphis,
Do they need
Tennessee,
to deport illegal aliens?
where they're currently terrorizing and traumatizing our communities. What we also need to make sure is that we have elected officials who are creating a pathway of opportunity for people who are currently undocumented.
Do we need a federal law enforcement agency to deport illegal aliens, yes or no?
We do need a federal law enforcement agency that deals with immigration, that doesn't kill people.
To deport illegal aliens,
what we
yes
do
or no?
also need is laws that make sure that people
Is
who
there
are
a single illegal alien that
undocumented.
you would deport?
You know, this is what I want you to focus on.
Is there
I
one?
want you to focus on. There are a lot of people in this country and in this community, in our communities, that have done so much to make them better, and we need to be prioritizing
So the
how
answer
we
is
create
no?
opportunity and
Is this the
access
Democratic position for 26?
The
That there are no illegal aliens that should be deported?
The Democratic position in 26 is that we don't terrorize American citizens, we don't terrorize undocumented
If you were
people,
advising
and we
Democrats in
don't kill
26, would you
people
advise
like
them to
Alex
answer this
Brady
question
and
this
Renee
way,
Good?
that you can't say there is a single illegal alien that should be deported by the federal government?
What is shocking to me is that you think you can narrow the challenges of
It's not narrow, it's broad.
immigration.
There's 20 million
that you can
here.
challenge the issues of immigration into one yes or no question, when the reality is the policies and practices
should we follow
of
the law
this
is the yes or no
administration have led to the deaths of American citizens and has not produced the results that
No deportations. That's the Democratic position.
Okay, that was CNN Friday night. And as you can hear, the Democratic position for 2026 was made very clear. It was an honest debate. Abolish ICE, abolish Customs and Border Patrol, And we can't articulate a single person that we want to deport. He could have said anything. He could have said, yes, anyone who murders, we should deport. Anyone who rapes, anyone who steals, anyone who terrorizes children. You know, he could have said anything about who should get deported, but he couldn't name a single person that they want to deport, because the true answer is, and the truth of it all, there is no one that Democrats want to deport. They let 20 million people into this country during the Biden administration, and they want to keep them all here. They will pull out all the stops. And that man, Pearson, is running in a Democratic primary. The radical Democratic base demands that they spend more energy on keeping illegal aliens in this country at all costs than on any other issue. Do they care about making your life more affordable? No. Do they care about fixing health insurance that they broke? No. Do they care about reducing crime rates? No. Do they care about our national security? No. They care about one thing and one thing only: keeping illegal aliens in this country that Joe Biden let in. That's what they will do. If Democrats regain power in 26 or 28, you heard it. Abolish ICE. Abolish Customs and Border Patrol. Deport no one. That is the Democratic position. Don't take it from me. Take it from them. Rounding out the first hour here of the Scott Jennings Show, don't forget we are having the unforgettable Gulf of America cruise happening this November. Turquoise waters, white sand beaches, incredible food, plus Mike Gallagher and Scott Jennings having discussions with all of you about the issues shaping America. It's going to be a luxury ship. It's going to be a great time. You're all invited. We're going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation. Book your cabin today. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Another hour ahead, we're going to talk about the Mississippi Miracle with Governor Tate Reeves. That's after this. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. Stay with us here on Salem.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, February 23rd. Scott Jennings broadcasting from Louisville, Kentucky today. Tomorrow we'll be in Saginaw, Michigan. I'm being dispatched by CNN with Van Jones to a bar in Saginaw, Michigan, where we'll be talking to voters about the president's State of the Union. So tune in tomorrow night for my State of the Union coverage on CNN. And then on Wednesday on this program, we'll have our breakdown of the president's speech. This hour, we're going to talk about education. When national education scores and achievement metrics were released every year, it used to be that the folks in Mississippi could always know where to go to find theirs. They would go to the bottom. For decades, Mississippi routinely ranked the lowest in many of the nation's testing rankings. The National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP scores, that came out of Mississippi were often so poor that the satirical term, "thank God for Mississippi," became widely used in other state capitals. The phrase was a reminder that no matter how bad your state had done, you could always count on at least beating Mississippi. But then everything changed. In the last decade, through a series of policy and curriculum changes, Mississippi started to climb in the rankings. No longer was the state a laughingstock, but rather it became a model for the entire nation. Test scores increased, graduation rates increased. Mississippi students went from performing a full grade level below their peers around the country to performing nearly a half a grade level above the average U.S. student. This all happened between 2013 and 2024. And after adjusting for demographics in 2024, Mississippi was the nation's #1 state in reading as well as in mathematics. Literally, #1 in the nation in reading and math. We call it the Mississippi Miracle. And joining us to discuss this miracle today is the governor behind this incredible turnaround. His name is Tate Reeves, the governor of Mississippi. Governor Reeves, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, hello, Scott. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Well, we're really proud to have this conversation and proud of what you have accomplished on behalf of school children in Mississippi. So I'll just start here. How did you do it?
Well, first of all, Scott, I think you have to go back to the 2011 elections, because people like you and me know that elections have consequences. And in 2011, for the first time since Reconstruction, Mississippi elected a majority of the state Senate was Republicans, a majority of the state House of Representatives were elected as Republicans, and we had a Republican governor. And we had, I grew up and went to public schools at Florence High School, and I got a great education. So while I certainly never believed that we had the worst educational system in America before that, there were certainly, as you point out, statistics that would prove otherwise. Well, we went in and we instituted a series of conservative reforms, primarily in 2012 and 2013 in our legislature. We then worked with our State Department of Education to ensure that they implemented those reforms in an appropriate manner. And here we find ourselves 10 years later, and it was even the New York Times called it the Mississippi Miracle. But I'll be honest with you, Scott, I use that term a lot, that phrase a lot, because it gets people's attention. But I'll be honest, it really wasn't a miracle at all. We just put in good, strong conservative reforms, and they've made a huge difference for all of our kids in all of our school districts.
Let's talk about the reading scores. The turnaround in literacy and reading has been nothing short of remarkable, and it seems like phonics education has been the key. Can you talk about that, implementing a return to studying phonics? Was that the trick to this whole thing?
It played a significant role. At the time, we called it the third grade reading gate. Now it's it ended up having an official name of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act. And yes, we did go back to the basics. We started teaching reading the way folks that are my age and older learned how to read, and that was to go back to phonics. There was this long-standing feud within the academia world about how the best way was to teach reading, and clearly that debate is no longer. Phonics is the best way for kids to learn how to read, and we did that in Mississippi. But we didn't just go back and start teaching phonics. We also implemented what was then called the third grade gate, which is in essence, we test our kids for reading abilities at the end of the third grade. And if you cannot read at a certain level by the end of the third grade in Mississippi, there is no such thing as social promotion. You do not get promoted to the fourth grade if you cannot read at a certain level. That is, I think, critical, because what gets measured gets done. It ensures that there's accountability in place for those individual students and for their parents. We ensured that we had accountability in place for our great teachers, and it's just made all the difference in the world. We also didn't stop there, and I was actually with, as you know, a large number of Republican governors over this past weekend, and we spent a lot of time talking about this. The thing that we also did that doesn't get as much publicity, but it should, we set a cut score in 2013 once the legislation passed, and we've raised that cut score 4 different times, so that every time we get comfortable, every time we get to a point where 96, 97, 98% of our kids are reading at a certain level, well, then we raise what it takes to be able to pass on to the fourth grade. Again, raising those accountability measures. So many states in this country have tried to reduce accountability and reduce what it takes to move on. We've done the exact opposite, which seems like common sense to me, because whether you're playing basketball or football or reading, you've got to keep raising the bar, and you got to keep working and getting better. And the better you get, the harder you got to work to get better from there.
That voice you're hearing on the show today, Governor Tate Reeves of the state of Mississippi. We're talking about the remarkable and dramatic turnaround and improvement in education scores in Mississippi. Now, Governor Reeves, you said that you elected a bunch of reform-minded Republicans to the state legislature, and you had a Republican governor, but I know you ran into some resistance as you were trying to do these reforms on education. Talk about the resistance. Who resisted you? What hurdles did you have to overcome? Because there are other Republican states sitting out there who simply haven't been able to go as far as Mississippi. In fact, I'm sitting in one of them today here in Kentucky. Tell us about the resistance, how you overcame it, and your advice for Republicans in policy-making positions around the country.
Well, we refer to those that resisted us and quite frankly resist all change as the coalition of the status quo. The people who have been doing it for so long and are absolutely convinced that they have to be doing it right because, after all, they've been doing it the same way for so long. The reality is that you can look at your numbers, and if you're not moving up, then you're getting passed up. I remind folks in Mississippi and across the country all the time, we've gone on an absolute basis from 49th in the nation in fourth grade reading to number 9 in America overall in fourth grade reading. Yes, when adjusted for our demographics, we go up to number 1. But if you don't adjust for demographics, we're number 9 in the nation. And we just had to have enough politicians with guts to stand up and say to those who were fighting us, to the coalition of the status quo, in large measure to the very school superintendents that claim that they are focused on doing what's best for children, that did not want to change the way they do it, that did not want increased accountability standards. We just stood up and said, we're going to do more. We're going to give our teachers the tools that they need to do the great things that they've done. And oh, by the way, in my first term as governor, we passed the largest teacher pay raise because as a conservative, I believe in rewarding success. And that's exactly what we've done in Mississippi.
That's Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi. They have had a dramatic and frankly, miraculous turnaround in education. That has paid dividends for the state of Mississippi as reading and math scores and high school graduation rates have gone up. It has led to business investment opportunity. There are businesses now even leaving California and moving to Mississippi, and Governor Reeves put his state in a position to take advantage of all of that. Governor Reeves, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Scott. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Let's get a word in here from our friends at Relief Factor. As you know, we've been collecting stories from Relief Factor customers around the country. Here's Rod in Texas, 64 years old. Used to build houses on the side. Years of hard physical work left him with excruciating back pain that became unbearable. Unbearable, that's his word. So he gives Relief Factor a try and, quote, within 4 days, most of the pain subsided. Over the next few weeks, it continued to improve. Rod said, and I quote, being pain-free is indescribable if pain is holding you back. And as you get older, you might be saying to yourself, I just got to live with it. It's just the way it is. But as you just heard from Governor Reeves, things can change, including your own life. Do it with Relief Factor. Try their 3-week quick start. See how it works out for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF. Or go to relieffactor.com. Ask yourself, how would it feel to be out of pain? We might just get the answer with Relief Factor. More on the Scott Jennings Show after this, here on Salem. Stay with us.
Ready for some common sense and a little Kentucky windage? Here's Scott Jennings.
Really grateful for Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi coming on the show today. The turnaround in Mississippi, just absolutely game changer for the students there, for the state. The connection between the improvement in education and the state's business climate is undeniable. It's red states that are leading America right now in education reform, and blue states that are still being strangled by these teachers' unions. They adhere to the old ways. They don't care about children. They only care about themselves and about political power. But people like Tate Reeves in Mississippi and some other red states, they are cutting through all the crap and getting to the core of what's happening, reforming what needs to be reformed, and it is to the benefit of all these kids. So thank you, Governor Reeves, for coming on the show today. By the way, here's something every parent needs to hear. More kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms. These companies that profit from screen time and engagement. On these platforms, predators are slipping through the cracks and families are paying the price. Our friends at Child Help hear from children every day who were contacted through these games and other apps. These kids are being groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults pretending to be someone else. One boy reached out through Child Help's hotline, terrified and ashamed. An adult that he met in an online game was demanding photos and threatening to lie to his threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. That chat that he had with Child Help may have saved his life. That's why Child Help matters. It's why your $27 donation matters. Every $27 funds another contact with that hotline. If big tech won't protect our kids, we have to help Child Help do it. Again, donate to Child Help. I am a personal donor. I know them. I've met with the leadership. I've been to their headquarters. I wouldn't ask you to do something I don't personally invest in or believe in. Text Child Help to 94878. Give your $27 today or visit childhelp.org/Scott. Scott Jennings here on Salem, gearing up for a big week. We've got the State of the Union this week. As I mentioned, I'll be broadcasting from Saginaw, Michigan, tomorrow as I go up there for some CNN State of the Union coverage. We'll be talking to some voters in Saginaw. And on Wednesday, I'll be back in Washington. We'll be broadcasting live from the National Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee office, the Ronald Reagan building. We'll have a number of U.S. senators coming through the show. I also want to highlight something else big that's going on this week, something coming from our good friend Dennis Prager. Dennis's latest book is called If There Is No God, The Battle Over Who Defines Good and Evil. Now, as many of you know, in November of 2024, it was announced that Dennis suffered a severe spinal injury which affected his diaphragm and movement below his shoulders. Dennis is obviously a legend here at Salem and in this business and in politics and in policy. And to watch Dennis Prager fight all this and fight through all this despite his injury has been inspirational and incredible. And now he has this book coming out. And I don't think Dennis is going to be able to do as much promotion on his book as he would normally be able to do. And I want to do some for him because anything Dennis Prager writes, I'm going to read. Here's a little bit of the book description. For 50 years, Dennis Prager, one of the best-known public intellectuals in the Western world, has explored the vital role Judeo-Christian values play in shaping individual lives and entire societies. In If There Is No God, he engages in provocative and sometimes heated exchanges with questioners who offer some of the greatest challenges he has faced concerning how one determines good and evil and why one's feelings can be life-enhancing yet morally unimportant. If God exists, why doesn't he punish the unjust? Why does he allow the innocent to suffer? How can religion better the human condition when so many of the religious are so often immoral? These timeless questions are in urgent need of answers. The reader need not be religious or even believe in God to find the arguments and debates in this book compelling and meaningful. All you need to do is appreciate the ideas of Dennis Prager and the reasoning that he brings to these conversations. This book is thought-provoking. It is important. It is accessible for the devout and the skeptic. In If There Is No God, you'll find a guide for anyone seeking clarity in a morally troubled age. Again, coming out tomorrow. You can buy it tomorrow. The latest book from our friend here at Salem, Dennis Prager. It is called If There Is No God. You can get it anywhere that you purchase your books. We're going to take a break. When we come back, last week, the Vanderbilt University Medical Center has announced they are no longer offering gender-affirming surgeries. This news continues to cascade. We'll have a guest who has some comments on all of this. By the way, none of this would be happening if Donald Trump had not won election in 2024. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. You're listening to us on Salem. Stay with us.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Monday, February 23rd. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting today from Louisville, Kentucky. If you're up in the Northeast in this bomb cyclone, we hope you're staying safe and warm. Ian, what's the snow total up to in New York now?
We're at 20 inches in Central Park.
20 inches in Central Park, maybe getting up to 30 in New York. I know LaGuardia had a massive amount. Newark Airport, Boston is covered up. So we'll keep an eye on the weather up there in the Northeast. It is the most snow that New York has had, I think, in over 5 years. So fortunately, they have a very experienced and hands-on mayor who's out recruiting people to bring their identification in order to shovel the snow. So seems like things are going to go well for the Big Apple. Last week, patients at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center received a notification saying their healthcare system will no longer offer gender-affirming surgeries, not just for minors, but for everyone. This new position continues a major cultural shift in gender-affirming care across the country since President Trump returned to the White House. In December of last year, Health Secretary RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz, who leads Medicaid and Medicare services, announced major policy changes around hospitals that provide trans surgeries for minors, all in an effort to end these procedures. And hospitals across the country are, in fact, ending the procedures. Just last month, a detransitioner won a $2 million lawsuit against New York doctors who pushed her to get a double mastectomy. All of this comes as the American Medical Association, the nation's largest organization representing doctors, now says these transgender procedures generally should be deferred until adulthood. And the American Society of Plastic Surgeons has said that gender-related surgery should be delayed until at least age 19. From boys and girls sports to schools hiding gender identity from parents, the Trump administration is taking an axe to all of this nonsense, and people follow leadership, it seems. With us now to discuss all of this is Jim Campbell, the head of U.S. litigation for the Alliance for Defending Freedom. It is the largest legal organization focused on protecting children from gender ideology in the country. Jim has personally argued several cases in front of the Supreme Court, including last month's Title IX case. Jim Campbell, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for your time today. I want to start this interview by playing a short clip from the weekend. I get your reaction to this. It is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. He's launching his presidential campaign, and he has appeared to make the central plank of his campaign defending child mutilation. Here's Andy Beshear in cut number 10.
I'm going to stand up against discrimination in any form, regardless of how it polls in Kentucky or anywhere else, because it's the right thing to do. So I vetoed every anti-LGBTQ bill that's come across my desk in Kentucky. I've vetoed every anti-DEI bill that's come across my desk in Kentucky. And I've done that because it's the right thing to do. And you only get so much time in this job. You ought to be doing the right thing every time.
Jim, it seems like our culture is going one direction, turning away from these transgender surgeries, at least for minors, and Andy Beshear is running headlong into the issue anyway as he launches a presidential campaign. Why do you think politicians like Andy Beshear continue to do this despite all of the increased warnings from medical associations and other people?
I think people like the governor haven't gotten the message, the common sense message that biological reality is what we should be operating consistent with. The science shows us that kids do best when they're struggling with these issues of gender confusion, when they're allowed to talk through it and they're explore their feelings, not when they're pumped full of drugs and exposed to surgeries that are wholly unnecessary.
Jim, during the Biden administration, medical professionals and government officials acted as though all the science behind this so-called gender-affirming care was settled. But now we're shifting away from that. People are saying what folks like you always knew to be true. What do you think is behind this dramatic shift away from the trans cult, the trans ideology?
The science is getting so strong on our side that they can't ignore it anymore. And so if you look in 2024, the Cass review came out of the UK, and the Cass review recognized that there are no good studies showing that leading kids down a path of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones actually helps them. In fact, what it does is it leads them into permanent physical changes that are wholly necessary. It leads them down a path that exposes them to lots of physical changes that are harmful for their bodies. And what kids need instead is an opportunity to talk about their feelings, explore these issues. And what we know from the science is that nearly 90% of kids that struggle with these issues before puberty will work their way through it if they're just given the opportunity. And what they don't need are politicians pushing them down the path of so-called gender transition.
Jim, there were a lot of people in American life. Some were doctors, some were politicians, people with fancy titles who were pushing this ideology, pushing children to get these surgeries. Do you think there is going to be more accountability, any accountability for the people who push this on the children of the United States of America?
Absolutely, and we're already seeing it. You mentioned at the outset that there was a verdict out of New York late in January, and that verdict found that there needed to be $2 million paid by a psychologist and a surgeon that led a 16-year-old down the path of a surgery that was unnecessary, that disfigured her body, when what she needed was someone to listen to her, someone to talk to her, and someone to explore the confusion that she was experiencing.
On the Vanderbilt decision, what do you think ultimately pushed them over the edge? Is it just the weight of the science, as you mentioned? Is it people contacting them? Is it a combination of things? What got a university hospital like Vanderbilt to the major announcement they made last week?
I think it's a number of things. You recognize that many professional associations came out in the last few weeks and clarified that they don't think it's consistent with the standard of care to perform these kinds of surgeries on young people. But in addition to that, you have the current administration that's made clear federal dollars are no longer going to go to these kinds of procedures and drugs. And I think that that's quite significant, because whether we want to recognize it or not, the bottom line matters to a lot of people in the healthcare industry. And if they know that the money won't flow to these kinds of drugs and procedures, then they're going to be less interested in going down that road.
Talking with Jim Campbell from the Alliance for Defending Freedom here on the Scott Jennings Show. Jim, I want to play another clip for you. This is a state representative from Minnesota. Where else but Minnesota? This state representative is named Lee Fink. Lee Fink is transgender. And Lee Fink is making an argument that children must have access to pornography for educational purposes. Let's hear cut number 8.
You mentioned the Paxton case, and the AGs in many states are very clear about that. They're almost jubilant about being able to use these laws to ban young people from accessing content that could be educational if they are queer. And you're a principal, you have LGBT students in your school, and we also know that they're not receiving sex education for queer kids. We know that prurient interest could be, for many people, the very existence of transgender kids. More and more people are saying there simply are no transgender kids.
Jim, when you hear a statement like this from a state rep arguing for children to have access to pornographic websites, how shocked are you by this?
I am shocked. I can't believe that these are the types of things that politicians are worried about. What we need is our kids to be educated well. We need our kids to be helped when they're struggling with issues, but to lead them down the path of dangerous and destructive materials is not something that they need to be exposed to. The fact that this is the path forward for some politicians, it really does make me worry about the future of our country. But again, the good news is that the tide is turning on a lot of these things. The everyday average American sees that what kids need is good education, not this kind of sideshow in public discussion and doctrine.
Jim, you're with an organization called the Alliance for Defending Freedom, and you're currently waiting to see if the Supreme Court will pick up your case regarding preventing schools from hiding students transitioning from their parents. Do you think they will take up the case? And if they do, what do you expect that outcome to be?
We're very confident that the Supreme Court will take up this issue. 4 of the Supreme Court justices have already recognized that this is an important question that the court needs to decide. We can't have public schools around the country that are leading kids down the path of transition and not even telling their parents what's going on. That's unacceptable. What we need is for the Supreme Court to look at this issue, to uphold the rights of parents to direct their kids' upbringing and to make sure that they're not cut out of important parts of their lives.
Jim, it strikes me that based on all the news we're getting from University of Vanderbilt Hospital, for instance, and other systems, the news we're getting on litigation, the news we're getting from medical associations, it seems to me right now that if you've been worried in this country about the direction of pushing children into these trans ideologies, if you've been worried about what's going on in schools, you actually have momentum to do something about it. What would you recommend to the average parent, the average person out there? How can they get involved? If this is something that they have been worried about, what would you say to them? What should they do? What can an average person, how can they lend their voice to this debate?
Yeah, I would say speak up and show up. So speak up in just everyday average conversations. Let people know what your views are on these issues. Show up at school board meetings when these kinds of topics are discussed and make sure people know what your views are. And then I would also say support organizations that are engaged on this issue. Organizations like ours at Alliance Defending Freedom, we're committed to making sure that biological truth is proclaimed on these issues and that everyone knows that this gender ideology is a dead-end path. What we need are real solutions for kids struggling with issues. We need truth, we need biological reality, and that's what we're committed to at Alliance Defending Freedom.
God-given, immutable truth when it comes to gender. That's what you're going to get out of the Alliance for Defending Freedom. Jim Campbell, thanks for coming on, and we look forward to checking in with you in the future as some of these cases move forward. Appreciate your time today, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jim. Let's have a quick word from Done with Debt. And here's why I want to tell you about it, because I know some of you out there are stressed about getting out of debt. And if you are, you need to listen to this. Done with Debt is one of the best organizations that we have ever seen at navigating debt relief. In fact, last year they did over $102 million in debt relief for our listeners and other customers. Done with Debt will navigate this for you, this debt relief process, so that you can keep more of your paycheck every month. They follow all the rules. They follow all the regulations. They have all the experts. It's complicated, and that's why you get experts involved in a complicated situation like the people that you'll find with Done with Debt. Don't wait for these lenders to tighten up their policies. This might be the window for you right now. Call up Done with Debt. Visit their website, donewithdebt.com. That's where you really should go, and then you can talk with a debt specialist. It's free. It only takes a few minutes. Go to donewithdebt.com. If you have this pressure in your life, you will not regret it. We'll take a break. When we come back, talking a little hockey and Olympics here on the Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
I will tell you the definition of never back down. The USA hockey teams at the Winter Olympics. That's who would never back down. I have to finish the show today highlighting these incredible wins by the USA men's and women's hockey teams at the Olympics. Now, it wasn't just great to beat Canada at their own national sport, although that is pretty awesome. And it wasn't just great to win the gold medal in hockey for the first time in 46 years, the Miracle on Ice. I want to highlight the incredible reaction from the players afterwards. These guys could not have been more proud to represent the United States of America. You had all these journalists over there trying to get American athletes to crap upon the United States. And by the way, some took the bait, shamefully. Not the hockey guys. Here's the hero, Jack Hughes. This is the guy who got his teeth knocked out and scored the game-winning goal. Here's what he said about what it meant to play and win for the United States of America. Cut 9.
This is all about our country right now. I love the USA. I love my teammates. It's unbelievable. The USA Hockey Brotherhood is so strong, and we have so much support from ex-players. I'm so proud to be American today.
This was such an incredible game to grind out. I mean, you're bleeding right through it just looking at you right now. Can you just talk about how difficult this gold medal was to win?
Unbelievable game by Hellebuck. He was our best player tonight by a mile. Unbelievable game. Unreal game by our team. That's just a ballsy, gutsy win. That's American hockey right there. That's a great Canadian team, but We're USA. We're so proud to be Americans. Tonight was all for the country.
What does this gold medal mean to USA Hockey?
It's everything. Like I said, the USA Hockey Brotherhood means so much. Look at these guys. We're such a team. We've been together for 2 weeks. We're such a team. The USA Hockey Brotherhood is so strong, and we're so proud to win for our country.
We're so proud to be American. Amen, Jack Hughes. Jack Hughes got his teeth knocked out. He's bleeding. And he scores the game-winning goal in sudden death overtime, taking away the gold medal from Canada. By the way, Jack Hughes has also taken away their hot chicks. He dates Tate McRae, I'm told, who's Canadian. You could look it up. We took their gold. We took their hot chicks. It's a good day to be an American, as evidenced by the words of Jack Hughes. I love these celebrations. I love these interviews. These guys were unabashedly pro-America. They talked about wearing our colors and our crest with honor, about playing for that flag on those jerseys. If you watch the ceremony where they were getting their medals and listening to the national anthem, you could see the emotion. They were not embarrassed about their patriotism. They had no hesitation about saying, I love my country. I love the United States of America. These young men understood that representing America on the international stage is a privilege, and they played like it, and they acted like it. We live in a country right now full of people who are being unabashed in their hatred of America. They're trying to get other people to join them. They want you to think America's rotten at the core, that America must be apologized for by anyone on the international stage or in politics or in culture. Anywhere. They want you to constantly apologize for this or that. These hockey guys apologize for nothing. They say, I'm proud to be an American. Felt like all the athletes were just being goaded and baited constantly. Tell us how bad it is to have to wear the stars and stripes, the red, white, and blue here in Italy. Tell us how embarrassed you are. These journalists, these sports journalists, by the way, ridiculous. But not Jack Hughes, not the American hockey team. They wouldn't do it. They stood up for you. They stood up for us. So I just want to say my hat is off. Our hats here at the Scott Jennings Show are off. The Team USA, gritty win, unapologetic patriotism. It was a great day for American hockey. And a great reminder that sometimes the simplest kind of pride in your country, is still the very best kind. We're done for the day. I'll be broadcasting this show tomorrow from Saginaw, Michigan, and we'll be covering the President's State of the Union. We'll have that tomorrow and reaction on Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. Common sense for the American people. See ya.